Okay, hi folks. What you might want to do for this session is move a little bit further forward, because this is a really huge room, and my throwing arm isn't good enough to reach the people at the back. And if I can't reach you, you can't win anything. So you might want to just shuffle up and move forward a little bit and move around. So whilst you're doing that, I just wanted to introduce myself and the session that we're going to be going through and explain some of this kind of stuff to you. My name is Simon. I'm a technical evangelist for Microsoft, based out of Redmond, and I cover Windows and enterprise mobility. So I'm one of the people that puts all of that stuff together into the kind of way that we come out and actually explain how this stuff works to you folks. And as you'll probably see, you'll see me around a little bit. I'm actually out on the Channel 9 stage, which is right next to registration. That's that really bright thing where we live broadcast to all the folks at home. There's a couple of thousand folks out there, so they're watching this session as well. And I'm sorry for those guys, but you're not going to be able to get any of the prizes because I really can't throw that far. It's going to be pretty tricky. So this session, it's a little bit different. It's quite late in the day. You guys have probably had quite a lot of stuff to absorb over the course of today and yesterday. So I wanted to do something that was a little bit different to the average kind of session where someone comes out and takes you through a bunch of stuff in a relatively methodical way. I had a dream for this session, and the dream was probably inspired by more than one beer. So you've got to bear with me as we go through this. It's supposed to be slightly more interesting and slightly more fun, and it's a bit different because I'm not going to answer any questions. You are. You're going to be the people that are answering the questions throughout this entire session. And this is a bit of a game. I'm going to reward you for interaction with prizes because that tends to work. So there are 3 rules for this particular game. The first one is that I'm asking the questions, not you. Now that's a bit strange. You can come up at the end and ask any more questions that you've actually got, and please do. I'm more than happy to answer them. And I'm happy to answer any questions on Twitter as well. The third rule is that there's only ever one answer to the question. Because if we could debate the answer to the question, that's probably going to lead to more than a 75-minute session. And some people are probably going to be a little bit annoyed that they didn't get something. And that's the other thing. I can't give you, every single one of you, something. That's a little bit tricky. So I have a way of doing this. There's a 4th rule. Volume equals prizes. Okay, it's working. The areas of the room that are the loudest are where I'm going to throw the prizes to. Now, I apologize in advance if you get hit in the head by one of these prizes. Just be happy that you got a prize. That's why there's no questions as well. It stops any of that kind of issue. So, to get us warmed up and in the mood, there's no prize for this first question. Question 1. Bit louder. We're almost there. We've got to get every question right like this as well. There we go. Okay. Hopefully we're going to fulfill my ambition, which is to have the loudest session outside of the keynote. So this is Windows 10, the top 7 features. And it's the top 7 features because there's actually 70 minutes left of the session. So, without further ado, for question 1. Windows 10! On there. One over there. Okay. Yes, Windows 10 is the answer to that question. So, let's take a quick look. I'm going to move across to one of my demo machines just now. And that's going to be on 7. So, why is Windows 10 going to be great for me no matter what size of device I've got? Well, particularly we've worked on Windows 10 to make it work with the feature called Continuum across any size of device. And that means that I can actually move between a really small device, like a 7-inch tablet, or a really large device, like an 80-inch screen. But as I move, Windows is going to work with me. So this is going to be nice for users because they're going to be able to take their machines, dock them, and use them sensibly. In this particular case, I'm using my machine as it's a laptop. So if I go down to the Start button, I get the option of a full screen start, or I can bring it down, and I can have a more familiar start experience, which is exactly what Windows 7 users expect. That larger start experience is what Windows 8 users expect. The reason we've done that is to make it easy for people to move to Windows 10. We've made it so that it's not going to be a big learning curve. That's the intention. One of the things that we heard very loud and clear about Windows 8 was that it was great, but you needed to actually teach people how to use it. That was great for me. I made quite a bit of money out of books. But that's not great for enterprises. There's cost there. So we've made it a little different. So it means that I get all of those familiar features, like if I want to take my Excel document and snap it to the right-hand side, and I also want to use Calculator, because lots of people do this. It's a weird thing, but some people forget that Excel can do maths, so they use the calculator. I don't really understand it, but I've always come across that in user support. And when people want to resize stuff, they just grab hold of the edges of the windows and they resize stuff. But what happens when they're actually using a touch device? Well, I'm going to just take off my keyboard. You've seen that a couple of times. And as soon as I do, my keyboard becomes disattached, and I'm now completely inside of a full screen experience. Everything has become immersive. I've also cleared everything from my taskbar. It means that things are just a little bit easier to touch. If I go down to the Start button, Start is full screen. And you notice that the option to make it not full screen pops away. So we're anticipating that the user's going to touch this screen. Let's go back to my desktop. I'm going to grab this one, move it to the right-hand side. Now this just came in with the latest preview. This little black bar in the middle. If you're a Windows 8 user, that's really familiar to you, because now I can resize with touch. I don't have to try and grab the very, very small edge of the window that I've had in desktop. I actually can just grab that black bar and move it around. It's nice, it's easy, it's familiar. And that was why we built that particular section in. I'll just redock, and you'll notice that what happens is we move back to having all my windows available to me again, just with a mouse and keyboard. So that's the first top feature of Windows 10. Not yet. Not until I say. Okay, so every time that we get to the end of one of these questions, there's a take a photo slide. It's your opportunity to be able to get hold of that resource, because I tried to make these easy for you to understand, but I had to make a lot of short URLs, and actually I was just a bit too lazy to put custom URLs in there for you all. So just take a photo and you can get access to the resource. Next question. I didn't say for the answer yet. Let's try again. Okay. Oh! Whoa, and one over this side. Whoa, there we go. Okay. So, Windows 10. Let's take a quick look at why that is. Now, in order to actually show you, the answer is Windows 10. In order to show you this next feature, I wanted to make it so that we could actually use voice with this. Now, in the keynote, they had a very expensive microphone that was rerouted down to the device. In this room, we don't have that, so I actually just recorded the entire session. And what I'm actually doing is using Cortana in a slightly less flashy way than we did in the keynote. What's the main thing that executive assistants do for their managers on a daily basis? Meetings. They make meetings. They do the pretty dull tasks. that we just need to have done. So if we can outsource some of that
Hey, Cortana. Add a meeting to my calendar for 1 p.m.
What's the title?
Presenting.
Should I add this to your calendar?
Yes.
I've added it. Just so you know, you have Meet the President at the same time.
Cool.
Hey, Cortana. How's the weather?
Right now, it's 75 and sunny.
Not quite, but, you know, almost.
Hey, Cortana. Can you remind me to pick up some eggs when I go to the grocery store?
Sure thing. Remind you when you get to grocery store. The closest one is Potash Brothers on 175 East Delaware Place number 44 in Chicago. Is this the one you want?
Yes.
Sure thing. Remind you to pick up some eggs when you get to Potash Brothers. Sound good?
Yes.
Okay, I'll remind you. You can see it in the notebook anytime.
Hey, Cortana. Where is McCormick Place?
So she finds the address. It's kind of useful. So that's kind of one of the sort of things that Cortana is useful for. If you've been on Microsoft's campus for the past couple of weeks, you'll have seen me, well, you'll have heard me actually, shouting at Cortana on my machine on a daily basis, hoping that she's going to start to recognize my voice and actually do some of the things that I've asked. What I actually didn't realize when I was doing that was that those things were actually being understood. So what actually happened to me, I was sat there and I said, I need to get some flowers for my wife. And then I ended up driving past a flower shop and my phone told me. That was kind of cool. Because things are integrated, because things talk to each other. That was very, very helpful. And in the keynote, we saw that Cortana is going to be able to integrate with other applications. That's very neat. And not for me, particularly because of the fact that I can talk to my PC. That might be a little bit weird. But being able to do natural language query is going to be incredibly empowering for people inside of companies. It means that I don't need to be an expert at finding data. I can just type that information in and it'll go away and find the information for me. That's a fabulous thing to be able to do. So I'm going to switch back to my other machine, which is that one, and just show you that. Because this is some of the stuff that we do with Cortana that you might not actually think about all the time. Being able to type in there. I'm going to type in Excel. Goes off and finds the Excel programs on my machine. Let me type in Ignite. Runs off, finds the files on my machine and on my network drives and on my cloud storage that are related to Ignite. So I can now go back and think, when I was at Ignite, I did this presentation and it seemed to be okay and I want to take that content and use it somewhere else. But the only frame of reference I've got was when I used it. Very handy. And if we have a look at what she's telling me on a daily basis, she's telling me like where my stocks are. How are my stocks doing? What kind of meetings have I got in place? What's the news? What's happening out there? And I always have to scroll through the news really quickly because sometimes it pulls some interesting topics in. And I've never really been able to do a presentation using the Bing homepage or anything else where something slightly tricky hasn't occurred. So we got away with that one. So that's Cortana. She's going to be able to change the way that we interact with our devices. Who's an IT pro? Who works in IT? Okay, that's like everybody because it's an IT conference. So it would be kind of nice if we moved on from the nice features that are going to help our users a little bit and talk about some of the cool technology that's been built in that honestly, it's going to make our lives easier. It's going to make our companies safer. So the next question, how do you make your standard operating environment more secure? Absolutely. That's the right answer. Okay. You're all incredibly happy, particularly around this area. And I'm going to throw these lightly because they're heavy. Well, let's get one over there. Okay. And I'm going to come to the other side as well. So, absolutely. This is one of those things which we've really been thinking about for quite some time, which is how can we make the standard operating environment more secure? So, the answer is Windows 10. Let's have a look at one of the features that actually enables that for us. That one. So, I've just remoted into one of my machines back in Redmond. I'm just going to sign in as administrator. Oh, don't you just love it when that happens? It's actually not a huge issue. Okay, so this is a machine that's running Windows 7. Running Windows 8. Let's start the firewall. And I'm also going to go into that other user profile. Okay, so imagine the situation. You've probably come across this once or twice. Your users want to get their expenses done. They're not necessarily thinking about much more that day. So when they see on their desktop an application that's called Contoso Expenses, even though there's a shield icon over it, they're kind of thinking, I need to get this done. Because nobody likes doing their expenses. It's just something that has to happen. So they double click it, and it had a shield icon. So it popped up a user account control message. When most users see a user account control message, what do? And in this particular case, what happened? Well, some very bad things happened. I just double clicked on some malware. I gave it admin rights over my machine, and it executed. It's just turned off my firewall. But in this case, it's actually done some much more nasty things. It's also disabled Windows Update. It's broken any antivirus that I've got on there. I'm now in a situation where my machine has basically been owned. This could be a lot worse. I could have just clicked on an application which actually was ransomware. So it may have encrypted some Windows files, stopping me from booting my machine. Or it might have encrypted some work documents, making it so that I can't access them anymore. And you've probably all had this situation where your mum has done this, where actually you've now lost access to all the photos of the kids. So it's kind of bad. With Windows 10, we've moved that forward a little bit. So I'm going to connect up to this next machine. I'm going to close that and just go with there we go. Now on this machine, same thing. I'm going to go double click my icon. And in this case, maybe I didn't hit that. What's going to happen is I get an error message. The execution was blocked. It didn't even get to the point of getting to a user account control message. We just stopped it dead. Because this application hasn't been signed and trusted. And we're in a situation where Device Guard has been enabled on this machine. And with Device Guard, unless something has been signed and trusted, and the enterprise who has turned on Device Guard has said it's okay to run things that are signed in this way, nothing can execute. And that's really, really important, because this means that we have a version of Windows which can actually be much better protected against zero-day vulnerabilities. It means that I can have I can have protection against polymorphic viruses, which change their code, but actually keep the core part of the malware the same. The code can change, which would normally mean that it would be undetectable to, say, signature-based anti-malware products. Now that can't happen. I have a completely safe machine. However, there's another thing that we solve with Device Guard, which is the potential for the kernel to get compromised. Now, in Windows, you can actually compromise the kernel. It's not massively difficult to do. In Windows 10, the kernel with Device Guard is running in virtual secure mode. It's actually running in a different VM running inside of Hyper-V, which is only accessible from certain other pieces of code. The same thing is true of the local security authority, the LSA service. That's invulnerable to the same types of attack. So this actually is also going to help mitigate pass-the-hash attacks. It's a pretty fantastic feature to have, and you get complete control of it as the enterprise. So, resources on it. One of these sessions was already run. There was a session in here just before. And there's another session coming up. Really do thoroughly encourage you to take a look at these sessions, because actually, the security stuff inside of Windows 10 is phenomenal. I mean, it really, really is mind-blowing. Let you take a photograph of that one for a second. When the flashes have stopped going off. By the way, you can tweet the photos as well. That's totally cool. Okay, I'm going to move on. What changes the identity model that your organization deploys? Oh, okay, I'll get some over to you in a second. Okay, absolutely, Windows 10 changes the security model. Sorry, changes the identity model. Whoop. Don't do the photo yet. So why does it change the identity model? Well, one of my favorite things that we've put a lot of effort into is Azure Active Directory. I've been a bit of an AD geek for my entire career. I actually started out doing migrations from NT to Windows 2000. And I kind of love AD. It's kind of a thing that I really get. I really understand it. I like it. The problem with AD has actually been that AD has stayed the same for quite a long time. And a lot of us haven't actually gone and deployed the most recent versions of AD. Because we tend to, as IT guys and girls, deploy the server at the same time as the desktop. So we've actually lost a lot of the enhancements. We've also got into this situation where there are billions of devices in the world, and they don't all authenticate to something. Well, Azure AD lets us have that capability for everything to be able to authenticate and to be able to manage that scale. We have 425 million accounts inside of Active Directory. We handle 18 billion authentications in Azure AD every single week. That's staggering that we can build out a service that can actually cope with that kind of things. It means that you don't have to build all of that service yourself. And it enables you to do some things that maybe you wouldn't have done before. Who would have put an Active Directory domain controller onto the internet? Yeah, nobody's put up a hand. Okay, one person did. Maybe want to consider a new career at this point. It was a pretty risky thing to do, and you had to be really clever and careful about it. We've thought about all of those things for you. We've made it so that you can scale with Active Directory through Azure AD. And what you do is you just connect the two things up. You implement Azure AD Sync Service. Now, Azure AD Sync Service is actually built to take the stuff that's on-prem and move some of it to the cloud, but not everything. You're in control. With the Azure AD Sync Service, you can actually say that I only want to move certain attributes of my user account up into the Sync Service. You have control over how authentication is going to work. You can keep the authentication on-prem if you want to. It's been designed to be pretty cool, but the one thing it's not been able to do before is actually to allow you to take a Windows device and just domain join it to Azure AD. And that's what I'm going to show you now. This is the process for being able to domain join a Windows PC to Azure AD. This is the out-of-box, the UBI process for a brand new machine. So imagine the situation. I've just walked into the place where my machines have been delivered. I've taken it away, I've opened it up, and now I'm signing into my machine. Click Continue. This is a process that normally takes some time, exactly a moment of time. And then it asks me for my ID. Now, I'm going to just type in my ID, which is Alice. I'm going to type in my password. And I just got my password wrong intentionally, because I wanted to prove something to you. We're actually authenticating to Azure AD during the process. So it's not some kind of offline thing that's happening, it's live. If I use my correct password, let's move this up just a little bit, it's dropping off the bottom of the screen. Hit sign in. Then that's going to take me through. It's now saying you need to protect your account. I've actually enabled Azure Multi-Factor Authentication for this particular account. And assuming that I'm getting cell phone signal, I'm actually just receiving a phone call.
Microsoft sign-in verification system. Please press the pound key to finish your verification. If you did, your account has been verified. Goodbye.
So, hopefully, we now have a situation where a user can take their device, domain join it themselves, and we know it's really them because we just did a two-factor authentication. What they have and what they know. They know their password, they have their phone. Now this is going to finish off its UBI process, and that may actually take a few seconds for it to run through. So I'm going to move us through to a process which is after the out-of-box experience. So I'm going to apply it. My machine's going to reconnect. Now Alice can sign in. She gets her password wrong again. And this time, she gets her password wrong again. Okay, and this time, she's been authenticated. We're now moving into a world of what I have and what I know again. I have my phone, I know my password. We're now going to make the PC the thing I have. So we can set a PIN on it. The PIN is going to protect my credentials inside of something called Passport, which means that now, in order to be able to use my PC, I don't have to enter a network secret. In fact, I never need to enter a network secret again on this machine in order to be able to access things in Active Directory. Again, it steps us up in, frankly, a pretty groundbreaking level of security improvement. Let's just go down and take a look at what that really means, though, to be Azure AD domain joined. I'm just going to go into the About section. And you can see that my PC name is actually just here. Oops, missed it. And this one is the organization. Now, that's actually the GUID of my Active Directory that I've just joined. So we're probably going to tighten this up because this isn't final UI. We are still building this product, so don't expect that you're going to have to go and find that GUID. We're probably going to sort that out. But it's pretty cool. It means that I'm always able to join to a directory no matter where I am. As long as I can touch the internet, I'm going to be able to safely take a brand new device and make it a part of my domain. So if you want to find out more about that, it's the next place where you can take a photograph. There's a really good place. And actually, we've got some courses on Microsoft Virtual Academy around this as well. We've been kind of signaling for a while that Azure Active Directory is one of those technologies that you probably really want to get your head around. It's probably a very, very good thing to know going forward. We're probably going to put more and more stuff in there. Okay, so time for the next question. What changes the way that you deploy operating systems inside of your organization? Wow, okay, that was pretty impressive down here. I actually heard you, that was incredible. Okay, let's throw more over this way. Whoa, got one. Don't know where that one's going, sorry. Okay, we're good. Nobody's had any injuries yet. Apart from me, I might have just got something. Okay, so the answer was Windows 10. Why do you deploy operating systems? What's the reason behind it? To upgrade it. To Windows 10. Okay, yes, it is a very good reason to upgrade. Please upgrade just purely because it's Windows 10. You probably need some reason to do it, and one of the biggest reasons is that when you go and buy a device, you buy it and it comes with the wrong license on it. It comes with an OEM license for maybe Windows Pro. And that's a little bit tricky because you want to be able to use the enterprise features. So what do you have to do? You have to get hold of that machine, PXE boot it on the network, deploy the image. The image has taken you months to make work correctly. You've put lots of time and effort into making that thing work. Time and effort is money. It costs your company for you to be able to do that. So we decided that we wanted to make it a much easier process for you, much, much more flexible. So we went back to the drawing board and we thought, how can we really solve the problem? So this is a PC which, again, Alice has got hold of. We had to solve this problem not only because it's expensive, but because the way that people acquire their hardware has changed a little bit. People acquire hardware now by just going to the local electronics store or buying it online and having it delivered to their house. And then they set it up as best they possibly can in order to be able to do some sort of BYOD type of scenario inside of their organization. And they don't always get it exactly right. They're not always matching corporate standards. So in this case, Alice has actually pre-configured her machine. She just entered her PIN. And you can see that, oh, that one's running enterprise. That's not good. Let's do a revert. Okay, magically, and pretend that didn't happen, Alice is going to log into her PC. Wrong revert. Ah, don't you just love it? Almost there, 78%. Okay, Alice is going to sign into her PC with her PIN. And this time we're going to see that actually she's running Windows 10 inside a preview. Nice. That's exactly what you'd expect. She's bought a PC and it came with Windows 10 Pro. She's also enrolled herself into her corporate mobile device management authority. So that could be Microsoft Intune. I love Microsoft Intune. It's an amazing product. It could be a different MDM. The next thing that she does is she sits there and she hits the sync button. And then what's actually happening when you hit that sync button is this machine is going back to the Mobile Device Management Authority and it's saying, hey, what should I be doing? And the MDM authority is going, well, I've got this configuration for you. I'm going to push this down to you as something called SyncML. It pushes it down. It's actually a standard language. And when the machine receives it, it's actually sucked into something called a Configuration Service Provider, or a CSP. The CSP then looks at the machine and works out whether any other CSPs on the device are actually looking to make the same changes. So if there's group policy being applied, it'll actually look to see whether this conflicts with group policy. If there's a WMI query being pushed in, it'll look to see if it's going to conflict with that WMI query. If there's some other configuration method there, it'll look for any kind of conflicts. And if it doesn't find them, it's going to apply those changes. So in this case, what we're actually pushing down is a new product key. We're pushing down our enterprise product key. And what's going to happen in a few seconds' time is that this machine is going to start a reboot process, and we're going to reinstall Enterprise. Now, in reality, this actually takes about 5 minutes to run through. I'm just going to minimize this and move us on to the next point in time. So this is now at the point where the SKU upgrade is applied, and it's now doing a reboot. Okay, it's coming back. There we go. And that's all it's had to do. It's not actually taken a new image of the operating system and reapplied it. It has literally just changed the SKU, which is nice. But then we have to do another upgrade, because what we're actually doing here is we're adding features in dynamically. Previously, you'd have had to actually have the WIM file available in order to make this happen, but we now don't. It just works. We don't need to be even connected to a corporate network in order to be able to get hold of a network version of the WIM file. Kind of nice. Once we come through this process, you'd probably expect exactly what would happen with, well, what would happen with a normal image distribution process. The person's going to have to sit there while they set up their machine again. You'd see the rainbow screen. You get all the nice, pretty colors. It'd move through. You'd go and get 3 cups of coffee while you're waiting. You'd come back, and your machine would need all the other configuration changes applying to it again. You'd have to go off and make another MDM enrollment. You'd have to go and make sure that the group policies were applying. You probably had to call IT about 5 or 6 different times in this process just to get to that point in time. But that's one of the things that we really wanted to stop happening. We're okay to go through a few reboots. That's fine. Hopefully, when we get towards a more final product, we'll have some UI that actually says that your machine's going to reboot a couple of times. But it's actually okay to do that as long as, when the user gets signed back in, all their stuff is there. Their documents are in the same places, they've got their VPN connections, their Wi-Fi networks are still known, their PIN for their passport is exactly the same. That's pretty cool. We were just able to move forward in terms of SKU upgrades, and something which would have taken literally hours to have done in the past has just taken about 4 minutes to run through the entire process. It's pretty neat. But it's probably not the neatest thing that we've actually done. Another opportunity to be able to find some other sessions where there's going to be more things about provisioning. This is a really, really cool process. There's a lot we can do here. Okay. What happens when a user can't spell? Okay, that's not an actual question. No prizes for that one. What happens when a user loses their PC? Kind of, sort of. There was people over here that knew the answer. Whoa, okay, that was a good one. Okay. What happens when somebody loses their device? It's a pretty nasty thing, because when you lose your device, you're not just losing a physical piece of hardware. You're actually losing much, much more than that. You're losing all of the information that's actually on that machine. You're losing, potentially, some corporate data. You're putting that corporate data, potentially, into the hands of a thief that's stolen the information. Somebody that's going to try and get into the device. Now, you could have the device encrypted, which obviously you're going to want to do, but some organizations need to go beyond having just encryption. I know you don't. I'm just fixing something. So some folks need to be able to go a little bit beyond just that particular need for encryption. They need to be able to do something later on. In this case, we have a machine which is, again, just enrolled into MDM. I'm going to hit sync. And what we've introduced is something which you've never been able to do before with Windows. This is honestly fantastic. This is remote wipe. a full remote wipe of the operating system, all of the data on the disk, everything is going to vanish. It's going to become unusable for a while. And that's actually really important for a couple of reasons. The first one is, yes, we want to be able to make sure that we can wipe that data. But another one is that you guys have actually been building with other operating systems. Apparently you've embraced the idea of BYOD. And now you've got other devices which can be remote wiped inside of the enterprise. And it's become one of those core requirements for security. The device that leaves the office must be remote wipeable, which is great. In this case, what's actually happening is that under the hood, the MDM provider has just sent down some syncml, which actually has an execute command in there to execute a remote wipe. But what's that going to do? Well, you need something to remote wipe Windows with. So what's actually being provisioned right now is a new copy of our corporate image, which just happens to be on the machine. In fact, it's a requirement to be able to use the feature. So I'm now able to actually move back to a state which is completely managed by me as an enterprise. I have the ability to remote wipe to a known state, which is pretty cool. In fact, you don't actually have that on any other operating system. When you do a full remote wipe, then you move back to a situation where the device is never going to be enrolled into MDM unless the person actually does it. So it's kind of game-changing in the way that we can move these kind of things on. To get more information on how to be able to do those kind of things, you can take a look at these sessions. Now, there's a very important point, which is that actually you probably need something more than just the ability to completely remote wipe an entire machine. You probably need the ability to just take off corporate data, because people really do get very, very annoyed when you wipe out the photos of their kids just because you think that they've accidentally lost their device and then they find it again a few days later. So you need to just be able to take away that corporate information. And that's coming as well. That's a part of another feature inside of Windows 10, which we're going to have a look at a little bit later on if we've got some time. But what is it that changes how you buy your devices? Oh, okay. Wasn't even expecting that one, were you? Where's it gone? Whoa. Okay. I'm going to throw one over that way as well. Oh, I almost came off there, yeah. That wasn't not great. Okay, yes, what changes the way that you buy your devices? Bring your own device. It's not going to do it again. Bring your own device has really changed the way that people go and buy devices. You can just go into a store and buy a device. You just order one online. But then it's normally a case of having to call IT and get stuff set up. You can have them enroll into an MDM provider. And that's great. It's a really, really good option. But not everybody actually has MDM. Some smaller organizations maybe can't afford to go that far, but they still need that kind of capability. So how do we solve that problem for them? Well, again, we thought there's got to be a way of doing this. How can we do that and keep compatibility with everything else that we're working on? And the way that we went for that was we actually decided to put something in called provisioning. Yep, we're there. Okay, so again, another machine, as Alice. And in this case, I'm going to just go back into, okay, I've not got email, that's strange. Alice has just received an email from somebody inside of her IT organization sending her these 3 files. These 3 files are going to reprovision her machine and make it more allowable to the customer environment and to the environment that the enterprise needs her to have. We're going to do a couple of things. We don't want her to be able to take screenshots on a device. We don't want her to have a specific application because for some reason we have a corporate issue with that application. And we don't want her to sit on the same edition that she's been on for a while. So the first thing, I'm going to go down here and into Cortana, I'm going to type in food. Or I'll find it on the start button, one of the two. I'm doing that just to show you that we have the food and drink app installed on this machine at this time. Now, for some reason, this organization has decided that the food and drink app is a bad idea. I'm going to suggest that maybe the IT guy in this company wasn't a foodie, but that's not normally the case. We're normally pretty much into our food and our beer. So what's going to happen? Well, we know what the package is going to do. We know that it's going to take an application away. So we're going to tell the user that that's going to happen. I'm going to say yes, add it. So that's going to add that package, and it's going to take away the application. We also want to stop her from having the ability to take screenshots on that machine. Again, it's going to lock down the user interface. It's going to affect the security configuration. So add that one. And then finally, we can apply an addition upgrade. Now, just before I do that, I'll type in food again. And you can see that it's taken the application away already. It's gone. I can no longer use that application. That's pretty neat. So when we go and buy machines, we often find there's a few applications that we don't like on there. So that's a good place to be able to use that. The addition upgrade is going to do exactly the same thing that I was able to do through MDM. Now, that's going to cause this machine to reboot in a couple of seconds and go through that exact same process to do a SKU upgrade. I could combine all of these into one single file. And there's other things that I can affect as well about the operating system. I can make the MDM enrollment happen automatically. So the user now receives an email. The email says, run this file, and you'll be enrolled into MDM. And then all of your policies can be inside of MDM. We could also make it do some other things as well. So it's a pretty impressive thing. We can combine those together into one file, or we can have them as separate files, and you could probably just run a batch file in order to make them all work. So kind of cool. We'll leave that because it's going to do its reboot, and we'll come back in a couple of seconds and see where it's gone. So if you want to get hold of some sessions on that, then that's another session that's running at Ignite that you can go along to. Good place to take a photograph. And we've got to the end of the session. Almost. Of course, if you're counting, that was only 7 questions. And it's really not the end. Because 7's over. It's time to move on. Oh, there we go. There we go. Horrible joke. It's not the last one. Way! Okay, so, question 8. What changes the way that you're going to protect the information inside? Okay. I'm going to just do one thing here. Let me see if I can get these guys up in the gods. Oh, it's a rebound. There we go. A couple of rebounders. Hey, okay. So yeah, what changes the way that we protect your data? It's going to be Windows 10. This, I think, is my favorite feature in Windows 10. I've been waiting for this ever since we did the first disclosure back in September about this feature. And everybody, when we did that disclosure, was thinking that this was marketing fluff. Because we didn't show it then, and we couldn't show it. And in fact, we are still building it. So you're going to see some stuff which is definitely not final UI. But it is pretty cool, and I'll explain what's going on in the background and how I've actually built everything that's happening. So let me just open up my VM over here. Let's do this in full screen. Okay. So in this case, you can see my documents folder just here. I'll just maximize that, it's a little easier. I'm just going to go into Word. Word is one of the applications which I've deemed to be trusted by my organization. I've deemed it to be trusted because I deployed it and I applied policy to it when I deployed it. And I actually did that as a deployment through my MDM provider. So I pushed the application down. once the application's there, we're going to mark it as being an enterprise application. And so it's the first time I've run it. It's going to ask me later there. Now you see, just down here, it's telling me that the application is a corporate application. That's saying that everything that I do inside of this application is going to be considered to be corporate. Now, in reality, I might use Word for something personal as well, so I might expect that to change. But in this case, I'm just going to open up a blank document, and I'm going to type in some secret information. And then I'm just going to close it and choose to save it. And because I've got that File Explorer window open to my Documents folder, that's where I'm going to just save this document. But you notice that actually it's going to be protected. You can see the little icon just there. Hit save. So now, you can see my super secret information is actually green, and it's encrypted to Microsoft. Let's just think what that actually means for a minute, because it's very, very powerful that we encrypted it as part of the operating system. Firstly, the user didn't do anything. They just created a file. So there's nothing jarring there. They don't have to go and make a decision. They just created a file. We've also encrypted it on this machine, which means that only this machine could open the file. Well, not quite, actually. It means that only this user, who is authenticated into Azure AD, and therefore is getting a certificate from Azure AD, could actually get into the file. That's really important, because what do people do with their files these days? They sync them to the cloud. They sync them to a public cloud service. And you might not have actually thought that that was a good idea, and you might not have thought that they should do it. But we know that typically organizations are running 300 cloud applications that they know nothing about. So it's a good chance that you've got people in your organization syncing their files up to the public cloud. In this case, it can't work because the sync application is not one of your corporate managed apps. Therefore, it can't even see the file. It has no access to the decryption keys. So you've now got into a situation where this document can't leak. They can't move it onto the internet accidentally. They could still do it intentionally, though. So they could actually, as the user, go and do an action which is going to cause the file to go somewhere. So I could, for example, go into a web portal and upload the file. However, Windows is pretty clever. Windows is actually going to say, I don't like that. And if you've got Azure RMS deployed, we're just going to RMS protect the file for you. So now you've got RMS protection on that file wherever it goes. That's very, very, very powerful. We also don't just rely on the fact that the user's creating a file inside of an application. We know where your corporate resources are. So if you're taking that file from your SharePoint Online, we can automatically protect the file with EDP as you open it on the machine. If you are saving that file from a file server inside of your company, we can automatically protect it with EDP. This is an amazing feature to have inside of the operating system. No other operating system protects at the file level. It's frankly completely incredible that we can manage that. And it's due to the investments that we have inside of RMS. So, that brings us to the end of question 8. Take a photo. This is where you can get more information on mobile devices being secure by design. Oh, sorry, there's people taking photos. There you go. Okay, so that was question 8, and now we'll move on to question 10. There we go. What changes the way that you browse the web? Yeah, did everybody get the joke, by the way? The really bad joke? Yeah, okay. You know it's a bad joke when you have to ask. So yeah, what changes the way? It's Windows 10. Let's get rid of these last few things. Whoa, sorry. I'm going to throw these lightly because I actually did hit somebody at the back there, and I'm very sorry about that. Hang on, you can suck them. Because they're sweets, oh yeah. Okay. And you can have a pack, there you go. It's all right, he works with me. I'm used to it. The rest you can come and get a little bit later on. So, let's have a quick look at the new browser inside of Windows 10. Which, as we all know, is Edge. Now, it's on some awful website. I'm just going to go back home. Oh, hang on. You're going to see it again. It's okay. It's not going anywhere. It's going to go to my website, which is a lot better, which is simonmay.com. So I love some of the stuff that we've put into this browser because most of what I've shown you is exactly the same on the desktop as it is on phone. But this feature is fabulous on phone. You can see that my blog here is a little bit annoying. Along the top here, I've got this bright orange bar, and then I've got all this other stuff. But if I go into a long article to try and read it, you'll see that it gets even more cluttered. I've got this sidebar with all this stuff in it. I've got this bar at the top. I've got all these social buttons, which none of this matters. None of this is actually part of the content that I want to read. I just hit the browse button, the reading button at the top, and it makes it readable for me. But it did something else as well. It automatically made and you can't really see it on this screen, I don't think. It's actually made the color of the background more readable. It's made it a slightly yellowy color. That's a real attention to design there. Because if you have a really bright screen on your phone and you're trying to read, you get tired eyes very quickly. So I like the fact that they had that level of attention to detail. It's pretty cool. It's beautiful when you're running on a mobile device. Now, one of the things is I need to get my web designer to make some edits here. So we're just going to go in and annotate this page for him. See this thing, this isn't good. It's appearing down here somewhere. And this doesn't look particularly great. This diagram's looking a bit kind of out of sync. So I'm going to save that, but it's probably not the best place for me to have made those edits. So I'm going to hit save, and I'm going to save it to my reading list. My reading list is going to sync between all of my devices and become available for me wherever I am. So now I know that I can go back to my desktop PC at home, and I can think, actually, I can go and make those changes because I am my own web designer. I don't have any budget for that kind of thing. But let's go and see what else is in my reading list. Oh, cool stuff to do in Chicago. Okay, let's go and take a look there. Oh, it's taking me back to that awful blog again. Okay, so it looks like, okay, there's something I can get on board with here, though. That appears to be beer. I like beer. That seems good. This looks like maybe this guy Rick has actually got some kind of recommendation here, but I'm not entirely sure that I trust him. But you know who I do trust? My personal assistant, Cortana. So Cortana just comes in and goes and looks things up for me. When I've found the information directly from the web page, it takes me directly to being able to do something quickly. And it's not just that Cortana knows where the restaurant is, but I can even actually just dive into OpenTable and book a table at the restaurant, which I might want to do because the restaurant has some pretty good reviews. So it seems to be a useful thing to be able to do. But Cortana can actually do more for me than that. That's a very simple example of finding some information. She knows who people are. She can go off and find out who a person is and pull in all of their information from Wikipedia. I couldn't do that with Rick because that pulls in some information about a nefarious character, and you don't want that kind of thing coming up inside of this kind of presentation. But it's kind of nice that we can do that, and we're going to see that happen more and more. So if you want some more information about Edge, the new browser inside of Windows 10, then we have a ton of that available. There'll be more coming out as well. But one of the most important things is that we haven't just dropped the world's favorite internet browser. I was thinking Internet Explorer. It's still there because everybody relies on Internet Explorer to make their line of business apps work. And we've made that really good as well. We actually have something called Enterprise Mode inside of Internet Explorer, which is very configurable and really helps with compatibility. Okay, so now it's the end. This really is the end, and I've come in a little bit under, which I was kind of hoping we'd do so we could all go for a beer a little bit more quickly. As I've said, I like beer. But before we get to the very, very end, there's one last little thing. I hope that nobody has left already with one of the prizes that I've been throwing out. Because there's a few little things on some of those prizes. They're not just t-shirts. So if you've got a tick or a cross on your t-shirt, then you have something else. So anyone with a tick gets one of the streams, and anyone with a cross gets one of the wedge keyboards. So you're going to have to come up and collect those from me, because I have to ask you a question before I'm allowed to give it to you. And no, it's not Windows 10. It's not Windows 10. I just have to check whether you work for a government entity or not, because there's laws about that kind of thing. But thank you very much for coming to the session.